what about Barak's background? He has a background in mass murder. It isn't that we can't accept the storyline that suddenly he became livid with rage at rocket fire and decided to nobly retaliate. In fact, as far back as 1994, more Palestinians died protesting the mass murder by Baruch Goldstein in the wake of his slaughter in early 1994 than were killed at the mosque. And the slaughterer of those Palestinians was none other than Ehud Barak. Why hasn't the media supplied us with this context?
Well, we have to take a break. The answer is fairly obvious because the media is Zionist-owned and controlled for the most part. As Michael said, the printed word now is no longer free here. It is a propaganda tool, and when you read some of the apologist material that is being proffered as journalism to the American public, you want to just retch. It's no longer objective. It's no longer journalism. It is mind manipulation. Be right back. Watching what they call coverage of the war. First of all, it's not coverage of a war. And secondly, it's not a war. This is a massacre, which has been, by the way, in the plans, if you've been watching the stories at Rense.com, and being planned for over apparently a year and a half. This has been a very high priority issue with the Zionist Israeli government. And let's give credit to many Jews, not only in Israel, but around the world, who are protesting. A number of them joined in the anti-massacre protest in Toronto the other day. So there are good people of all faiths and all religions who can step aside and look at this as a human issue. These people are being liquidated, and it's quite clear that the ultimate plan for Gaza City is probably not too dissimilar from that which the United States visited upon Fallujah. And we do need to remember that while this country was killing 1.5 million Iraqis under the Bush-Cheney-Halliburton regime, the media here, of course, essentially looked the other way. 1.5 million people died in a Holocaust there. Granted, the number of Palestinians is quite small compared to that. Death is death. This program has always been an equal opportunity mourner. We condemn death and violence. And beyond that, we condemn evil in whatever form it takes. Michael, go ahead, please.
Well, I wanted to begin with the point that I mentioned before we broke for the commercial break, that the roots of Israeli violence are in the rabbinic texts. And the most infamous of those texts is found in the saying of Rabbi Shimon ben Yohei, which is, Tob Shib Goyim Harag, even the best of the Gentiles should all be killed.
Is this Talmudism, so to speak, to help our listeners understand, or is this Torah? What is this?
Well, they call it Torah, but actually there's the Torah that they're referring to is the oral Torah, and it's no Torah at all. It's the traditions of men, as Jesus clearly stated, that and as Isaiah stated, and as all the great prophets, Isaiah talked about those who are dealers who mix the wine with the water. And here he was talking about the elders who were in the habit of mingling a water tradition with the commands of God. And one of the confusions, I think, is that people who imagine that Israeli violence is motivated by the Old Testament. The Old Testament is anti-Israel, and Rabbinic Judaism is anti-Old Testament. Rabbinic Judaism defames Noah, it defames Abraham, it defames Isaiah, and if we have enough time, I will give you the specifics of those. But in this case, I'm talking about the Talmud, and really one of the founders, the foundational elders of Judaism, Rabbi Shimon ben Yohei, who has a holiday dedicated to him in the Israeli state.
And again, he believed that all non-Jews were not worthy of life, basically.
Exactly. They should be exterminated. And once a year, Judaics around the world gather in the Israeli state for what's called Lag BaOmer, which celebrates his birth. And there are a lot of nonsensical miracle stories associated with him. I'll just give you one very quickly. The Talmud says that during his lifetime, Rabbi Ben Shohei's lifetime, a rainbow never appeared on earth. God didn't need to show the rainbow while Rabbi Ben Yohei was alive because the rabbi was so great a person.
I see. Very good.
So great a person that his own righteousness protected the whole world, and God's rainbow was not needed. And that's from the Jerusalem Talmud, Barakos 9:1. And so here we see not only an extermination warrant for genocide, but we also see this incredible egomania, which actually trumps God's creation. And if we have time, I will endeavor to document the fact that it trumps God himself.
But again,
so this is an extra Old Testament religion. It's a man-made religion. Well, the Ben Yohei statement is fairly notorious, but in my book I go into far more recondite material. For example, from the Babylonian Talmud Sanhedrin 58b, when a non-Jew strikes a Jew, it's as if he's striking the divine presence itself. And there's also something about mass murder as a mystical technique for the attainment of ecstasy and personal experience of the divine. This came out after the 1994 Hebron massacre by the aforementioned Baruch Goldstein, when Rabbi Yitzhak Ginsburg, who's of the Chabad Lubavitch group, and he wrote a tract called Baruch HaGever, which treats atrocity as a mystical technique for the attainment of unmediated, ecstatic, and personal experience of the divine.
So they get off on genocide.
They get off on genocide, and this is, you were mentioning how this is increasingly in the open. It's in the open, but because we live in the United States of amnesia, we don't have these things brought to our attention. I'll give you an example. More than 20 years ago, Jeff, as you recall, the black leader Louis Farrakhan termed Judaism a gutter religion, and that was 20 years ago. Now, his remark has been recalled and condemned by the media almost constantly ever since. It was even an issue in the Democrats' presidential candidates debate last February when moderator, the late Tim Russert, stated to Barack Obama, quote, "The problem some voters may have is, as you know, Reverend Farrakhan called Judaism a gutter religion." So here's Russert bringing up an ancient statement from Louis Farrakhan of 20 years vintage. But now watch this. During a sermon over the 2001 Passover holiday, just 7 years ago, the Shas party, a major Israeli party, their rabbi, Ovadia Yosef, exclaimed, quote, "May the holy name visit retribution on the Arab heads, cause their seed to be lost, and annihilate them. It is forbidden to have pity on them. We should give them missiles with relish. Annihilate these damnable ones." End quote. Jeff, who brings this up nowadays? Who confronts the Israelis with these statements? Rabbi David Batsri, director of the Magen David Yeshiva in Jerusalem, said, and I quote, "The nation of Israel is pure, and the Arabs are a nation of donkeys. They are an evil disaster, an evil devil, and a nasty affliction. The Arabs are donkeys and beasts. They are endowed with true filthiness. There is pure and there is impure, and they are impure." Now, that's from March 21st, 2006.
Wow, all right, stand by right there, Michael. We'll come right back. My guest, Michael Hoffman. Talking with journalist, author, researcher, historian, scholar, Michael Hoffman. His book, Judaism Discovered, a true landmark of our times. 1,100 pages hardback. You can go to his website, revisionisthistory.org. I don't call these people revisionist historians. I call them revisionist scholars just as well. You can look in guests and find reviews of the book. It is monumental. Keep in mind that the power that is seeking to dominate has forced Amazon to ban sales of the book, so we would urge all of you to support Michael Hoffman, buy a copy of the book, and certainly spread the word around if you find it something that you enjoy and are informed by. And I don't know how you can't, or you wouldn't be listening to this program. The issue of I don't know what label to use. It is tricky, and that's part of the problem. We'll just call it Zionist Israeli slaughter. It goes back a long, long way, and we are seeing the latest example of this. And I don't know exactly how to quantify it, because there are organizations like Jews Against Zionism who are adamantly opposed to Zionism. I don't think Israel should exist at all. And we can go on to that other canard, of course, about Ahmadinejad and his alleged statement, which he never made, that Israel should be wiped off the map in a physical sense. He didn't mean that.